I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily Week in Review. The Assembly of First Nations National Chief, Roseanne Archibald, says she and First Nations expect concrete action and changed behaviors, not hollow apologies. Chief Archibald is calling on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to demonstrate through actions that he is committed to the healing path forward. The PM has apologized to the chief of a British Columbia First Nation that invited him to visit Kamloops on National Truth and Reconciliation Day. This was in order for him to reflect on the legacy of the country's residential school system. However, Mr. Trudeau instead flew to Tofino, BC to see his family. A Canadian senator says Afghan women ministers issued pleas for help to Canada and warnings about atrocities 2 months before the Taliban took control of Kabul. Senator Salma Tulajan says more should have been done earlier to help Afghans leave the country. The senator says that during a June video conference with Canadian politicians, female Afghan ministers warned that a crisis was looming. In July, Afghanistan's ambassador to Canada briefed Canadian parliamentarians on Taliban brutalities as they advanced on the Afghan capital. There is overwhelming support for requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination to be allowed or allowing access into places like restaurants and gyms. A new Leger poll indicates 78% of respondents either strongly support or somewhat support requiring proof of vaccination to visit non-essential public spaces. Support ranges from a low of 70% in the Atlantic provinces to a high of 86% in British Columbia. 81% of Alberta respondents also supported the move. A military contingent is in Alberta to help with the COVID-19 crisis. Public Safety Canada says the Canadian Red Cross is also planning to send up to 20 medical professionals to augment or relieve staff working in Alberta's hospitals. Operation Laser is the Canadian Armed Forces response to COVID-19. Newfoundland and Labrador is also sending a medical team of 5 or 6 intensive care staff to work in Alberta's northern oil hub city of Fort McMurray. A mayor of a Manitoba town facing tighter public health restrictions says being lumped in with communities that have low vaccination rates is not fair. In Niverville, vaccine uptake is at 81.8%. This is slightly above the provincial average. Mayor Myron Dick and other leaders think there should be an exemption to punitive penalties. The Southern Health Region, where Niverville is located, is home to 15% of the province's population. But its residents make up half of all active COVID-19 cases in hospital and 2/3 of cases in intensive care. Toronto researchers have found that the prevalence of non-melanoma skin cancer is on the rise in Ontario. It is climbing by 30% from 2003 to 2017. The researchers found that younger people had the most rapidly increasing rates of skin cancer, particularly younger women. The study also suggests annual mortality rates for skin cancer rose almost 5-fold from 1998 to 2017. The study is published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. McMaster University has apologized after thousands of students partied off campus in Hamilton this weekend. McMaster President David Farrar says it is completely unacceptable. About 5,000 people descended on a street early Saturday afternoon, leaving a wave of damage, resulting in multiple charges. A small plane that crashed in Quebec on Saturday evening had been towing a marriage proposal banner. The Transportation Safety Board says the Cessna 172 was towing a banner spelling out "Will you marry me?" when it went down near Old Montreal. The passenger in the plane was killed in the fiery crash, while the pilot is in hospital with undetermined injuries. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Quebec is budgeting more than $500,000 to promote and support the French language among immigrants. The province says the funding will support 12 associations that work on the integration of immigrants in developing projects to strengthen their use of French. It says French skills are essential for immigrants in order to be part of Quebec society. Nova Scotia's proof of vaccination policy starts today. The new rules mean anyone aged 12 and up is now required to prove they are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 in order to access non-essential services and activities. The province says original proof of full vaccination records is acceptable in both paper and digital formats. An international ferry service that links Canada with the United States is set to resume next year after being cancelled 3 years in a row. An update on the Bay Ferries website says its high-speed catamaran ferry service between Yarmouth, Nova Scotia and Bar Harbor, Maine is expected to start in the spring of 2022. The last 2 seasons were cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The 2019 season was scrapped due to construction. All right, up next, we take a look at housing affordability and what can be done about it. An interview with Tim Hudak up next. The Ontario Real Estate Association is calling on the provincial government to amend zoning laws. OREA says the Ontario government should allow single-family dwellings to be converted into townhouses, duplexes, or triplexes. The group's claim is that the existing zoning laws are exclusionary and outdated, and they are worsening the housing affordability crisis. OREA also says the current laws encourage NIMBY forces to drive up the costs of homes in entire neighborhoods. OREA CEO Tim Hudak has said the zoning laws defy common sense. Well, with us to discuss this further is Mr. Tim Hudak himself. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thanks, Stephen, for having me on the show.
Now, you're saying that exclusionary zoning policies are at the heart of Ontario's housing affordability crisis. So tell us a little bit about these policies and how they impact housing, sir.
Yeah, let me take it back to big picture. I mean, the challenge today is we've gone from a housing affordability problem, Nima, to a full-blown housing affordability crisis. And for most of us, growing up like me in Niagara or Toronto or Ottawa, you always thought, if I played my cards right, I'd be able to afford a home in a neighborhood like the one I grew up in. But for so many Canadians today, that is no longer the case, and it's slipping dangerously out of reach. So Ontario Realtors have put together a plan to turn this around, to help bring the keys to your first home closer to hand for hardworking Canadians. Your viewers can see it at bringaffordabilityhome.com. And you make an excellent point. One of the big issues we have today are these bylaws that were created in the 1960s and 1970s that conspire to drive up the costs and limit access to housing that is affordable. They favor monster homes and mansions, but they're actually biased against entry-level starter homes, and Lord knows we need more of those.
Now, in addition to the zoning laws, there are also concerns around NIMBY, or not in my backyard forces, affecting home ownership. So can you tell us a little bit about how NIMBY forces affect ownership in Ontario?
Yeah, so, picture the wartime bungalow in St. Catharines or in Etobicoke, and a property owner or developer could take that wartime bungalow that's worn out and knock it down. And it'd be very easy for that property owner then to build a 4-story monster home without much process at all that could house a wealthy family. And that's their right. They've got the property. But if a property developer said, you know what, I'm going to create 3 or 4 housing units, maybe duplex, a townhouse on that spot, they get the runaround when it comes to process. It will require a zoning application. NIMBY forces then come in and delay a project by months or over a year. And every month the delay means the prices go up. It costs the property owner tens of thousands of dollars in fees, let alone legal costs. And many of them throw up their hands and say, forget it. And at the end of the day, they move somewhere else. But those 3 or 4 families that could have had a nice place in St. Catharines or Etobicoke, they're out of luck. They remain in rentals or living with mom and dad.
All right, sir. Well, Ontario Realtors are calling for a change in this under the More Homes, More Choice Act from 2019. So tell us a little bit about this act and how it would benefit Canadian homebuyers.
Well, basically, it means we'll have more homes, whether they're starter homes. We also need more called move-up homes. Once you have kids, you need a bit more space. That's a big problem in our market, as well as rentals. We want to make sure that Canadians who work hard, who play by the rules, who've saved up their money, can have fair access into a home. And we're very worried because a recent survey that OREA did showed that almost 50% of people 45 and under in Ontario have actually looked outside of our province, Dima, solely based on trying to afford a home. That's that next generation of entrepreneurs, of talent, of job creators who could leave our province. That's a 5-alarm bell. So if you go to bringaffordabilityhome.com, you can see a number of ideas like modernizing our zoning rules, getting rid of red tape, delays, overregulation, giving first-time home buyers a property tax break when they buy their home, and also getting dirty money that's being laundered in from overseas drug lords or corrupt officials and snapping up real estate, a comprehensive plan to keep that Canadian dream of home ownership alive. When you go to that website, bringaffordabilityhome.com, you can actually click on a button and send a message directly to your MPP.
All right, sir, just about a minute left. But another thing Oria is pushing for is as-of-right zoning. So what does that mean, and what are the benefits of it?
So our policy is focusing on areas that are of high demand in urban environments here. So let's say you're within 500 meters of a subway station or a transit station, or you're right next to existing density in an urban area. That will give property owners a right to develop those types of 2, 3, or 4 family homes. They could build up, 2, 3, or 4 stories and have those as ownership or rentals as well. Right now in the province, we've got tall and we've got sprawl. We've got really high buildings and then single family homes. We need something they call the missing middle. It's important because it's affordable for first-time buyers and also really attractive for empty nesters who want to stay close to the grandkids. And then they move out and that single family home becomes available to a new starter family.
All right, Mr. Hudak, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
My pleasure. Thanks for your interest.
Up next, we take a look at rising tensions between China and Taiwan. Stay with us. On Monday, China sent 56 fighter planes toward Taiwan in the largest show of force on record. This continues days of sustained military harassment against the self-ruled island. The U.S. president sent his national security advisor for talks with a senior Chinese foreign policy advisor. Meanwhile, a group of French senators has arrived in Taiwan for a 5-day visit led by a former defense minister. On Wednesday, Taiwan's defense minister said the situation has become the worst it has been in 40 years. This as the country's legislature debates approving a special defense budget. China claims democratically ruled Taiwan as its own territory to be brought under its control by force if necessary. The two split apart amid civil war in 1949. Well, with us to discuss this matter today is Dr. Charles Burton, Senior Fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Sir, welcome back to Forum Daily.
It's good to speak with you, Nima.
Now, let's start with a quick overview of what has been happening between China and Taiwan in recent days.
Well, as you said in your introduction, the Chinese have been particularly aggressive towards Taiwan in sending in large fighter planes, designed to menace and intimidate the people of Taiwan. And I think to give some assurance to people in the People's Republic of China that the government in Beijing is still committed to restoring Taiwan to the embrace of the motherland, as they put it. From the People's Republic of China point of view, Taiwan is a renegade province run by an illegitimate regime, whereas the government of Taiwan was brought to power by a free and fair election, democratic election last year, and enjoys the overwhelming support of the people of Taiwan, nearly all of whom, according to polls, do not identify as Chinese and do not want their island to be controlled by an autocratic one-party regime in Beijing. They prefer freedom and democracy, which is the way that things are being run in Taiwan by the current Democratic People's Party government. So, it's a very troubling situation if China decides that they will take Taiwan by force.
And this increased military pressure started on Friday, which was China's National Day. So what kind of message is Beijing trying to send to Taiwan through this?
Well, there are problems in the Chinese economy at present. There's been a looming failure of an enormous $308 billion primarily construction firm, Evergrande, and other issues in the Chinese economy due to increasing Chinese government intervention in economic activity to promote social goals, Chinese communist social goals. So I think that by engaging in very aggressive action against Taiwan, it does distract the concern of the Chinese people over the prospect of a failing economy and put them more into an aggressive nationalist mode, expecting the potential for war with Taiwan, which of course would become the dominant issue in China, not what's wrong with the economy. So, this sort of thing goes on, and not infrequently in China where there are problems internally, and they attempt to rally public support by engaging in strong action against Taiwan. But this is really unprecedented in its ferocity, and I think that's why so much of the global community is very concerned about where this may lead.
All right, sir, just about a minute and a half here. But speaking about the global community, considering that Taiwan split from China in 1949, why have most countries not established diplomatic ties with Taiwan yet?
Well, most of the countries had diplomatic ties with the regime on Taiwan, which was the former nationalist regime at the time that was ruling all of China, and then lost the Civil War in 1949. And so, for example, Canada recognized the Republic of China and then was obliged to withdraw recognition when we established relations with the People's Republic of China in 1970. But now I think a lot of countries are looking at Taiwan as a de facto independent democracy and thinking that perhaps we should establish and recognize that regime as a legitimate regime representing the aspirations of the people living there on the basis of the self-determination of peoples. And that, unfortunately, hastens the People's Republic of China, Chinese Communist regime, to settle this matter through military force if they can.
All right, Dr. Burton, definitely we'll have to keep an eye on this dispute here, but thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily and giving us your insight.
Good to speak with you.
After the break, a look at top stories from around the world that happened this week. Stay with us. We'll have more news when we come back. Texas has been ordered to suspend its new abortion law. The order Wednesday by U.S. District Judge Robert Pittman freezes the abortion law known as Senate Bill 8. It bans abortions once cardiac activity is detected, which is usually around 6 weeks. That is before some women even know they're pregnant. The decision is the first legal blow to the Texas law since the U.S. Supreme Court allowed it to take effect last month. Court documents unsealed earlier today accuse an Alaska man of threatening to hire an assassin to kill U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski. In a separate threat, police say a caller allegedly left a voice message at Ms. Murkowski's Washington office. It was asking if the Republican knew what a .5 caliber shell does to a human head. The first appearance for suspect J. Allen Johnson over allegedly making threats against 2 senators will continue until Friday. The European Union is urging member countries to provide relief funds to consumers and small businesses hit hardest by rising gas and electricity prices. The suggestion comes amid criticism that the bloc's climate change fighting policies are fueling the problem. Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson said Wednesday that providing targeted support to consumers, direct payments to those most at risk of energy poverty, cutting energy taxes, and shifting charges to general taxation are all measures that can be taken very swiftly under EU rules. Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz is denying wrongdoing and vowing to remain the country's leader. This despite being under investigation in a probe of suspected bribery. Anti-corruption prosecutors said on Wednesday they are conducting an investigation into Mr. Kurz and 9 other people. This, as well as 3 organizations it didn't name, on suspicion of breach of trust and bribery. The case centers on allegations around the use of finance ministry money. They claim it was used to pay for manipulated polls that were published in a newspaper without being declared as advertising. The military leader of Guinea has announced that senior international civil servant Mohamed Bibagui will serve as prime minister. This in a government that is transitioning the West African nation to civilian rule after last month's coup. Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, who was sworn in as interim president on Friday, announced Mr. Bivagui's new position. Mr. Bibagui is 68 and has a notable career in development, and much of it in the United Nations. A group of French senators visiting Taiwan met with President Tsai Ing-wen. The trip comes amid heightened tensions between Taiwan and China. President Tsai gave Senator Alain Richard an official distinction recognizing his contributions to Taiwan-France relations. China has recently stepped up military, diplomatic, and economic pressure, sending a record number of fighter jets toward the island. Well, meanwhile, Greece's lawmakers are debating and voting on a broad 5-year defense pact signed last week with France. It includes a clause of mutual assistance in case of attack by a third party. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis signed the deal with French President Emmanuel Macron during a September 28th visit to Paris. Greece also announced it would be buying 3 French frigates for the Greek Navy. This comes amid increased tensions between Greece and NATO member Turkey over energy exploration rights in the Eastern Mediterranean. Days after kicking out 7 UN officials, Ethiopia is accusing them, without providing evidence, of inflating the magnitude of the humanitarian crisis in the Tigray region. The Ethiopian ambassador said the officials boosted the number of needy people by over 1 million. He also says they caused over a dozen deaths in a camp for displaced people, among other allegations. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres asked the ambassador to provide written proof and says Ethiopia had no right to expel the officials under the UN Charter. Iraq has signed a contract with a United Arab Emirates-based renewable energy developer. This is to build 5 solar power plants in the oil-rich country with a chronic energy problem. Iraq hopes the agreement would help mitigate its energy supply gap. The country is a major oil producer with plentiful energy resources. Still, Iraq suffers daily power outages due to rampant corruption, an aging grid, and other technical issues. General Motors has announced plans to cash in as the world switches from combustion engines to battery power. It's promising to double its annual revenue by 2030. This with an array of new electric vehicles, profitable gas-powered cars and trucks, and services. This includes an electronic driving system that can handle most functions on the road. Canada's Walk of Fame is set to expand when it holds its Toronto Gala on December 4th. Among this year's inductees are actors Keanu Reeves and Graham Greene, retired Lieutenant General and Senator Romeo Dallaire, and musician Bruce Cockburn. Also on the list are singer-songwriter Julie Black, late blues artist Salome Bay, wrestling star Bret the Hitman Hart, Olympic champion decathlete Damian Warner, and cargo jet CEO Ajay Virmani. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for this past week. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.